Terrific, and I'm live. Hello, everyone. I'm Tete. My friends call me Tet, surname Kofi. And I've been mulling over for quite a long time the best way to convey the messages that I want to share with my friends. And it seems to me that the best way of telling the story is to talk about just plain, simple UK living from a perspective that many of you may never be privileged to have. So I'm calling this series UK Living, and this is episode 1. And this episode is about the couple of prevailing stereotypes which define the way people from different ethnicities connect with each other. Now, one of the things that nobody else seems to do is to treat the public as adults. The thing is that the challenges we confront now cannot be met by the immature, by the frightened, or by children. These challenges can only be met by people who actually take responsibility for the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And so I'm going to deal with the fundamentals. Fundamentals like the fact that we live so hugger-mugger with each other that all our borders, even personal borders, are incredibly porous. We are effectively a unified whole. And if you doubt that for a moment, think about this, that we live in a world in which trade sustains our quality and the standard of our lives. When people talk, they talk as if they're speaking to a monocultural world or a monocultural society. It's not at all. And so the idea that, everybody is supposed to have one mindset in our society is completely fallacious. The reason I say we can't think only about one group or another group, or speak to only this group or that group, is that, take the example of trade. Without trade, the countries of the West would be bereft of fundamental natural resources that sustain their standard and quality of life. There's a mineral called coltan, most of which comes from a country called the Congo. The Congo is a desperately poor country, but it is actually the most naturally endowed nation probably on the face of the earth. Most of the world's coltan comes from the Congo. I bet you 80% of those listening to this broadcast have never heard of what coltan is, but it is an essential mineral without which smartphones like this one can't be made, without which even the guidance systems on rockets, cruise missiles, and other smart weapons can't be made to work properly. And yet, this isn't found in the Mendip Hills or the Lake District or the South Downs in the United Kingdom. It's found many thousands of miles away in coltan, and Britain has to make arrangements for acquiring this natural resource. And it is but one of many that run our modern high-tech way of life. Now, to engage with that country, you have to relate to its people and its systems of government and all the other things that make the Congo available to be traded with. Another example is, let's talk about exchange rates. We can't here in the United Kingdom sit and think that we don't connect with other people when, after the Chancellor's latest tax cuts for the very rich in the United Kingdom, sterling plummeted to levels not seen for maybe 40, 45 years. I think it dropped as low as 1.05 to the dollar. Now, that is bizarre, but it illustrates perfectly how the decision by a government minister here in the United Kingdom, principally aimed at, in his words, creating growth in the United Kingdom, has massive spin-off consequences all around the world. So the point I'm trying to make is that this notion that we living in the UK can live in cognitive apartheid, i.e., just close our eyes and close our ears to what other people are experiencing and doing with their lives, is complete lunacy. It is literally like the child who says that, who thinks that if they're playing hide and seek and they put their hands over their eyes, just because they can't see anybody else, they can't be seen while they're hiding in the middle of the room. It is complete lunacy. So the first thing is, let's relate as adults and cut this cognitive apartheid. Second point, perspectives. I'm sharing a perspective that comes from a place which is usually muted in the mainstream media. I am in the UK, but as far as the authorities, social memes and social values, except in the most cosmetic of ways, I am not really of the UK. And I'll come to more of that in a moment. And the reason I'm not really of the UK comes down to the point of equality. And here, I'm going to share something with you which might jog your mind and make you view that particular point of whether or not people from different parts should be valued equally is in their interest or even fair or not. I'm going to talk about how the UK connected with my country of origin. I'm going to read something for you very briefly. The Royal African Company was an English mercantile trading company set up in 1660 by the Royal Stuart family and City of London merchants to trade along the west coast of Africa. It was led by the Duke of York, who was a brother of King Charles II. We're on Charles III now, the brother of King Charles II, and in 1685, York took the throne as James II, King of England and the United Kingdom. The Royal African Company shipped more African slaves to the Americas than any other company in the history of the Atlantic slave trade and was owned entirely by the British Crown. Now, we've just had the royal funeral. This happened in 1660. There is a straight line between the events of 1660 and today. Of course, slavery was later abolished because the far more important thing when the Industrial Revolution took place was the raw materials. But the relationships established back in 1660 were politically maintained, often at the point of a sword or a gun. So when you look at it that way, the only reason I, Tete Kofi, originally from Ghana, I'm in this United Kingdom today, is that the United Kingdom sent merchants out to where I come from and established those relationships. If they hadn't, I'd have no reason to be here. If they hadn't, my family wouldn't have got the idea that it would be advantageous to their children if they were sent to private English schools in the United Kingdom. So there is no discontinuity from the past to the present. And if you look at it from this viewpoint, you have got to understand that the realities that these events, which nobody's making up, which happened in history, have a massive impact on the way we should be and think today. That explains to you why I am here in 2022 is that UK living has created certain very powerful stereotypes, which we tend to deal with by burying our heads in the sand, either because it is inconvenient to look at, either because it's inconvenient to look at, or because to adjust them might lead to a shift in privileges which we are not prepared to encounter, or because it makes us feel bad about ourselves. Because the things that we feel good about are shouted from the rooftops. That's human nature. It just is what it is. So the biggest stereotype is that in the United Kingdom, and this goes way beyond the idea of nationality, because there are many people who are melanated from the Caribbean, from Africa, who live here, who were born here, don't really know anywhere else, and who are as British as fish and chips. Those people live here, but the prevailing stereotype says that leadership is something which derives to a particular group, and that group is mostly white. In fact, if a person is white from the rest of Europe and comes to the United Kingdom, they are still given that particular privilege over a person who is of African or Caribbean origin, who was born in this country, speaks the language as the natives, and is used to all the usages and the memes and the traditions of the United Kingdom. That's the first stereotype. If you were rude, not rude, if you were blunt, you'd call it white superiority. The other stereotype that goes with it, and it's really like the flip side, it's like it's the front of the hand and the back of the hand, is that people of African origin, let me speak for people of African origin because I have the lived experience, are supposed to adopt a supine posture when dealing with the prevailing or the majority white population. Again, this has got nothing to do with your right to be British or the place of your birth. Even the immigration laws are being changed in such a way that a second tier of nationality is being created because people who have the right to dual nationality may well be denationalized or deported and told about it after the fact, after the action's been taken. So you've clearly got a two-stream approach towards nationality and worth as a human being here in the United Kingdom. Together with that supine non-leadership posture goes often patronization. Now, actually, in the UK, kind of racial epithets and so on and so forth are increasingly the domain of the lunatic fringe. everybody knows you're crazy if you go around using nasty racial epithets at people who aren't of European ethnic origin here in the United. Everybody knows you're mad. However, what that's morphed into is an attitude of patronization where people who look like me are expected not A, to speak their truth, B, to follow a narrative that doesn't reflect the realities of their lives. That's when you're patronizing a person when he can see that something is purple and you are asking them to say that it's yellow. So patronization goes with it. And actually, most of modern day racism is done by means of people being patronized. Now, these two stereotypes are two of the prevailing stereotypes that define the way people of African origin live in the United Kingdom. And it seems to me now that it's time to move on. It's time to stop denying it exists. And it's time for people to take responsibility for it when it's going on. Look, I've had interns come into the business that I run who wanted to treat me like the help. And it's sometimes, first of all, it took me a long time to recognize what their behavior meant. Because, they'll be casually patronizing and then live in total denial of it and deny it to you so vociferously that you believing that their behavior being so outrageous couldn't possibly be perpetrated by a person who is normal, which you believe the kids to be, that it can't be happening. But actually, after a while, you realize that they are living totally in denial of their behavior. And more importantly, it's the only behavior they've been taught in their society towards other people. And because there is this cognitive apartheid, they have never, ever been able to sit down and have to have that face-to-face conversation because the society deals with this problem basically by living in denial of it. So that's the key thing about the UK moving forward. People have now to take responsibility for their racial attitudes or their attitudes towards different ethnic groups. And for the simple reason that you can't run cognitive, intellectual, economic, social, or cultural apartheid anymore. It just can't happen. Not unless you want to go back to the Stone Age, to the Stone Age or the Iron Age or something like that, where modern technology wasn't available and where you didn't have to interact with different parts of the globe just to maintain your standard of living. So that's it. That's episode 1 of UK Living. And I really hope that this makes a contribution to your attitude. And as I say, this is broadcast in a world which cannot have cognitive apartheid, because once this is out there, I can't decide who sees it and who doesn't see it. We are all going to see it, so it's worth mulling over. Please, if you see this on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. And this is another part of cognitive apartheid, because people run away from this kind of content. And so it is less shared by YouTube. And so the cognitive apartheid is maintained. and after a while becomes justifiable with people saying, "Ooh, I didn't know. Actually, it's out there." Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.